Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Kerry-Ann Stimpson here, Chief Marketing Officer, JMMB Group. Thanks for joining. I love all my people who have logged sharp at 7 o'clock. You guys never follow Jamaica time at all, at all, at all. Thank you so much for joining. I know other I see my speakers have already come in here. Well, I see one of them. I see Laurie. Not hearing you, so I don't know how you try again. I think your mic is still muted, so if you want to go out and come back in. All right, so while we fix technical difficulties, guys, because you know that is a story of our life, right? In the age of technology, we typically always have tech issues. Some weeks are worse than others. But you know, guess what? We're going right through it because we have a fantastic conversation. So the topic for today is we're going to be talking about protecting your assets and your legacy. And I guess depending on the audience that you're in, the word legacy may sound like a big word, but I guess in Jamaica, some people call it dead left. A lot of us call it dead left. What you're gonna leave behind, the assets that you have now. How do you protect them? Not only when you're living, but what you need to do to prepare after you disappear. Life on this earth, because while yeah, a lot of people don't like to talk about those things, we know that for those of us who are left behind, dead left can be a serious issue, and bone of contention with people when the proper arrangements are not in place. You know what I mean? So we're really gonna break it down. You know, as always, JMMB, we like to keep things real. We like to get to the heart of the matter, and we just talk the things them as they're supposed to be. So, Laurie, how are you? Can you try unmuting and see if you can? We can hear you now.
Yes,
Very.
good night. I am here. I am here. Good
Hey,
night,
Laurie.
everybody.
Good
Hey,
night. What's up, girl? As I said to everybody, technology is not going to get the better of us. We
it
will
shall not.
challenge. It will challenge us every now and again, but we're still pushing through. So I think we're still waiting on Caroline to join or certainly to send her a request to speak. So until we do that, Laurie, could we just start out? I introduced myself at the top. I'm Kerry-Ann Stimpson, of course, everybody. This is not a JMMB talking head, but I'm Kerry-Ann and I'm head of marketing for JMMB Group, and I'll be moderating the session here again tonight. Happy to be with you guys, and one of our speakers is here. And she is Laurie-Ann Jackson. Laurie, could you introduce yourself and tell the folks a little bit about yourself, please?
Sure. Thanks, Kerry. Thanks, JMMB team, for having me. JMMB is I'm a team member as well, so I'm very honored to be able to share as a team member, but also with a hat that I wear as an attorney at law. My absolute passion is conveyancing, which is real estate, but a lot of the times my clients have matters that unfortunately have me supporting them through probate matters or administration matters, which is, what, as Kerry said, we call deadlift in Jamaica. And as such, that's a large part of my practice now. So I am happy to share with you tonight just some tools and information, nothing too heavy. We won't go into any legislation or anything like that, but really things for you to think about as you journey through your financial life cycle and your personal journey as a human on this planet, so that your friends, your beneficiaries, your loved ones can really reap the benefits of all the hard work you would have done while here. So that's it for me.
Very important. Thanks for that, Laurie. So yes, guys, so we have an attorney on the conversation here tonight, right? A lot of us don't get the opportunity to hear directly from an attorney unless you pay big money to get through the door, right, Laurie, to set up that initial consult. I had a friend of mine, I tell you, I had a friend of mine who had to do a first time consultation with an attorney about a personal matter. And my darling, she said, until the funds were wired to the attorney and there was proof of payment in the account, she got the Zoom link for the meeting. I said, yeah, man, I'm in the wrong profession. So big up to all the attorneys who are providing a valuable service. So we have an attorney on the session tonight who is Laurie-Ann, who is not only a member of the team, yes, as she said, but an attorney at law. I'm going to be guiding us through certain aspects of the discussion. And then our second speaker is here, Kerry-Ann Stone. Kerry-Ann, is it Caroline or Caroline? I'm not going to mess up people's name tonight and be accused of doing such. Could you introduce yourself, unmute your mic and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Caroline Stone, and I'm an employee here at JMMB Insurance Brokers. I have a wealth of knowledge and experience in life insurance administration and sales. And I'm here today to show you how important this gift of life insurance is in your personal life and your business life, and how you can incorporate same. So I hope everyone will just listen and just pick all the nuggets that we have to share today.
I am sure they will, Caroline. And I know, are you able to touch? Because I know there are some folks that are not only eager to discuss the life insurance side, but they probably also be eager to discuss how insurance can even go beyond that and protect things like your property and so on. Are you able to touch on that, or are we just focusing on life for this
Yeah,
evening?
man, life and property, life and
Okay,
general
great.
insurance.
Great. Okay, perfect, perfect. I'm just making sure that my audience is good to go. So, Laurie, I think you may need to send another request in because I'm seeing you no longer being reflected as a speaker. And so, if you could send in another request, and then we'll get you back on so we can get your mic open. Um, Great. So, okay, guys, let's jump right into it. We have a slew of questions here that we put together that we know based on all of the feedback that we would have gotten as we prepared for these sessions. We just kind of have an idea of what people want to know. So, let's start off with a big question. Let's start off with you, Caroline. So, Caroline, when you talk about insurance, sometimes insurance gets a bad rap, right? And let's just keep it straight. I think a lot of the times insurance gets a bad rap because, hey, you're spending all this money in premiums every year on a maybe and a what if, and that's how a lot of people honestly feel. What's the likelihood that you'll ever need to call on your insurance company for something and you're doling out these premiums? But we believe that, obviously everything has its context. Could you share with us, Caroline, you know, in as much as insurance gets a bad rap and seems as an unnecessary evil, how important is insurance in protecting your life, your assets, property, and so on? Could you kind of break it down for us? Why is insurance really so important, and how important is it?
Okay, I will. Kerry-Ann, you touched on a poignant point for everyone. Life insurance is an intangible product, right? And so a lot of persons, they're paying and are not seeing the benefit immediately or until they have an accident or a risk, right? And so for a lot of persons, insurance may not seem to be necessary because, nothing not happening and I can probably wing it. But insurance is very important, right? And these are some of the areas and the reasons why life insurance and general insurance is important. Firstly, what is our biggest asset? Our biggest asset is our own lives, right? And without that, none of the things that we pursue or try to achieve in this life is possible. And so, for the very most important point, is that life insurance is important on our own lives, right? Once we have dependent children, or once we have any relative or any person or business or anything that is dependent on our input, we need to protect our lives, right? That is responsible for everything else that we pursue. And when we will protect our lives, we first of all get rid of a lot of worry, and it gives us peace of mind. We can just set it and forget it. And a lot of persons may not want to have the conversation or even start the process to get life insurance because They feel like, oh, we're bringing down debt for myself. A lot of persons will hear their parents say that once you mention insurance, oh Lord, you're bringing down debt for me. You don't want to think about it, right? But once you do it, you can just set it and forget it. Another thing that is very important is that once we have any thought at all for like a legacy or to protect our asset to pass down to our family, you need life insurance, right? Because it's a love purchase for our families. It protects the welfare of our families in our absence. So if we're a main breadwinner, and we want to ensure that our family have at least a decent life or able to survive financially in our passing, life insurance is a must. It also helps to protect income. You have policies like personal accident policy that if you're out of commission by an accident and you're unable to work, whether at a job or in your own businesses, this insurance coverage will protect you and give you portions of your income as agreed in the contract for a period of time as agreed in the contract. So while you're recuperating and recovering, you can one get medical attention and reimbursement for those medical attention, and you can get portions of your salary during this period. So that's a plus, right? And also,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
you for persons, SMEs that have employees, studies show that the welfare of employees is important. So when these employees have either group life or group health coverage, they're happier at work, they perform better at work, and their bosses or CEOs or company managers or owners are not burdened by any sad passing for family members on the part of these employees. Because what you find is that a lot of times employees will come to the employer and say, you know what, this is a situation, we don't have any resources, we need some help up for funeral or for medical expenses. So when you have that in place, it's a given, everybody wins, right? And it helps,
Yeah.
as in this process that we're doing now, it helps to preserve assets, your home, property, motor vehicle, your investment, right? And for business continuation. So we'll discuss further on how it is important and how it matters in this area as we go on.
Wow, wow. You know what I like about what you shared, Caroline, is when you said it's a love purchase for your family. And I mean it's so poignant because the thing is that we don't think of the eventuality of what can happen if something were to happen to us. So if you are the major breadwinner even or a breadwinner, how you leave your family behind. A lot of us always say, boy, especially for those of us who have children or has anybody dependent on us. Sometimes I know, sometimes I say, boy, I would have loved to die if the Lord go and take me. I hope him take me after my children then pass the worst. But the reality is that we don't know when we're gonna go. And
Yes,
we may just in fact go while the children are still very much dependent on us. And in a
yes.
lot of instances, had we had the right insurance protection in place, we could have left something behind for our loved ones, even if, let's say, we didn't have the millions of generational wealth yet
Mhm.
amassed to leave for the children or the dependents. Having an insurance policy has a similar kind of effect, where a good insurance policy can leave a possible lump sum for them to either carry on or to take care of initial final expenses, funeral not cheap, and all
Mhm.
these things. And unfortunately, a lot of families are left with the burden of debt to be able to carry on after the death of a loved one who was such a critical part of the family. So I say all of this to say, Caroline, because it moves into the nice segue into the second point about this whole thing about, well, there is self-insurance. So we hear, unfortunately, from a number of our clients who will say, well, me not go and renew my motor policy, although that's illegal. But let's put that aside for a moment. May not going to renew a policy because we're going self-insure. And the
Mhm.
thing is, I guess they believe that they can self-insure, meaning they will stand the financial risk of anything happening to them, whether it's a car accident or a medical emergency or anything like that. But that in and of itself carries risk. If you think paying insurance over time is a risk, that too, self-insurance in and of itself is a risk. Caroline, could you kind of just share with us what are some of the risks associated with this concept of self-insurance?
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned it, right? Because even when it is mandated by law, a lot of motorists choose to self insure and just hope for the best. And by self insuring, they're not doing anything fancy, just like what you mentioned, like by putting aside their own funds over time to help them with any unforeseen expense, right? It's just that they just don't pay, they don't have any long term emergency savings goal, and they just hope that nothing don't happen, right? But we all know that it's difficult to save consistently for our emergency fund. Most of us find it difficult to do that, right? And sometimes time is a factor because sometimes they say, okay, this will happen down the road, if anything, and it may just happen tomorrow or it may just happen next week. What do you do in a case like this, right? So, what you find is that Jamaicans on a whole, we on a whole tend to be very risk tolerant, right? And it's evidence in all of those Ponzi schemes that flourish in Jamaica and the popular games of chance that is in operation. But when we choose not to insure a motor vehicle, for instance, it's really risky and irresponsible behavior, right? And some people will say, well, I don't have the money, but you can't afford not to. Because here what? Even persons who can afford to self-insure, like multimillionaires, billionaires, those persons ironically don't rely on self-insurance, right? Because they believe in maintaining and passing down their generational wealth. And so they don't use their personal wealth to do none of these things. They believe in insurance. So what I find is that
Yeah,
person, yes, so persons really. So, one, if we faced with the risk of a early death or sickness, right? We know why self insurance is important because we can be prudent investors. There are persons who are investing from the start, working, which is what you should be doing for retirement, and they do have a lot of money saved up and a lot of investment. But one catastrophic illness, cancer,
yeah,
or a heart
yeah.
attack, that can wipe out investment in months, not years.
Mm-hmm.
It can just
Mm-hmm.
wipe out everything. And we are all, Jamaica is located in an active hurricane and an earthquake zone, right? So natural
Mm-hmm.
disasters are a real possibility, not just for our personal lives and homes, but our properties, commercial, and all our businesses also. We have business interruption where we have hurricane and stuff like that. And we have a lot of peril, earthquake, flooding, fire, theft,
Yeah.
robbery. But all of that is important, and it's a reason why we need insurance and not to self insure.
Right, right. I'm glad you raised that point. Caroline, thank you so much for kicking us off on this important discussion. I'm going to transition now to Laurie because we've been talking about, well, insurance is, yes, a very, very important part of the financial protection equilibrium as far as ensuring that we put the requisite things in place to make sure we are insured against any possibilities. So, loss of life, as you said, there are different types of insurance policies available to protect your life, help you through challenges with health and covering property and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm going to ask Caroline now to mute her microphone and then we're going to transition to Laurie because let's get now into the whole matter of what we call legacy, or as we like to say in Jamaica, deadlift. Because that is a huge bone of contention in a lot of people's lives in Jamaica. And if you've ever heard, unfortunately, probably if you tune into the news in this country every week, there is some domestic upheaval or somebody knows somebody in their lives who is going through some deadlift argument and stress because you know proper things weren't put in place, quite frankly, before an individual died, and so it leaves the family in upheaval as to what to do, how to do it, and the headache to go through all of that. And again, not everybody has the opportunity to get a memo that okay, you're going to be dying shortly, so you need to get your stuff in order. None of us knows when that time is, so it's so very important to have our stuff in gear. So, Laurie, let's kick things off because I think the whole matter of having a will is a sticky conversation. And there are some of us who are diligent with our wills, some of us not. I know some people think, boy, the thought of talking about a will or doing a will is like me a plan for dead. But the reality is, whatever determines your death has nothing to do with a will. really just making a will has something in place for any eventuality. So, Laurie, as our attorney on the panel now, putting on your attorney hat, could you kind of just share with us how important is having a will, right? And what can happen if you don't have one in place? I think folks need to understand, because maybe they think, oh, well, admin Jen is going to come in and sort out everything if you don't have a will. Maybe not. But I'd love you to just kind of get into what are the things people need to bear in mind why having a will is so critical, and if they don't have one, what that could mean for the loved ones that they leave behind.
Right. So, you know, as Jamaicans, as we said, we love to believe that, putting things in order is really calling down debt on yourself. But the reality of the situation is not putting things in order actually leaves your ability to benefit or to gift those you love the most. It actually diminishes it significantly. The importance of a will is clarity, absolute clarity, clarity about your intentions. And you can be as granular as you want to be, and also as specific and directional as you need to be, right? So when persons pass on, it's a very emotive time. The emotions are very, very high. People aren't sleeping. People are fighting. People are mourning. People are grieving. Going through a lot of emotions, and so the decision making process is often clouded by that. The emotion surrounding what's happening, especially if it's quick and you weren't expecting it. And so having a will actually helps your beneficiaries to not have to think through too many things, not have to guess, not have to fight, not have to argue between each other about who is to get what and how and when, right? So clarity also, our lives change throughout, or as we age, our situations change. We may move. Some of us may, have started off in rural areas and come to town, and so our lives look different. And so the persons who are closest to us at the time of death may not be the persons who um, actually know your family and know where they are and know, who to contact and who must get what. And so the clarity around that is essential. They also may not know about your personal obligations, your financial situation, and also your convictions. A will is also somewhere you can gift your church if you want to. The persons who raised you may not know that you are now a Seventh-day Adventist, and therefore you want this part of your estate to go to the church that helped you when times were rough. They may not know those things, and so it's very important to have it so that there is clarity. And if you don't have it, worst case scenario, as I said, is people are left to guess, right? And a lot of persons don't understand the actual process and who is entitled to apply to the administrator general on your behalf, right? So if you don't have a will, you go through a process called administration, and the law and our civil procedure rules outlines who can apply, right? As who is entitled to apply. A lot of persons don't know who is in that table of who's entitled to apply. And also, it can be a very lengthy process. It can be, especially if there is disagreement or lack of clarity about, who your actual beneficiaries are. You have scenarios where you send the documentation down to administrator general. You believe you have declared all of the children, and then you get wind that there are more, right? Or you believe you would have declared all the assets, and then you get wind
Mm-hmm.
that there is more. So it's important. The key word here is clarity.
I'm glad you raised that, because it's so very important that we don't, as you said, in the height of grief, we don't leave people to assume things. And respectfully, it's not everybody that knows everything about all aspects of their life, your life. You spoke about the fact that maybe your family doesn't know that you've changed churches. They don't know where you worship. They don't know if there is a charitable organization or faith-based organization or association that you want to leave a contribution to. That sort of way. I think it's so
Right.
very important. But you know what struck me, Laurie? There is this thing that people talk about. You ever hear of this thing called a letter of wishes? I don't know if
Oh,
you've
letter
ever
of
heard anything.
wishes.
I know
No,
there's some people. So, like, I know there's some people that have a will versus a letter of wishes. And, like, I know I had a relative who had both. But the letter of wishes, I think some people are mixing it up because letter of wishes really more so has to do with, I guess, things that, like, the funeral, you know what I mean?
that's yes,
What hymns you
exactly.
want sung, yeah,
Yes, yes, yes,
who
yes.
must
And
give the
those
eulogy. Mm-hmm.
exactly, and those things are not usually captured in a will.
Mm-hmm.
I'm personally aware also of a situation where the deceased left the plot number where they were to be buried. They left the
Mm.
outline of songs. They left
Mm-hmm.
who should, as you said, do the eulogy. They left the scriptures they wanted read. So
Mm-hmm.
it's I am aware of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard that, but it's not the same thing as a will, and certainly doesn't have that legally binding component if done in the way that a will is supposed to be done. And I think that's important. And I think, I mean, I may share personally, I did a will for myself for the very first time last year. Naughty, naughty, I know. But I was set to do major surgery last year, and I said, I'm going to do this major surgery. I have two young children. Anything can happen. Let me just do this will. And I should have done it a long time ago. But what I realized in doing the whole will process too, that I even could say, well, what should happen to my children? Suppose I die, and then suppose their father dies. What should happen to the children in terms of who should they be left in care of? And even that was just so cathartic, it was very relieving. And I'm like, I didn't know something like that could be put in a will as well, no? Oh, I got Laurie again. I think Laurie probably dropped off. Man, I tell you, technology is getting us tonight. Laurie, you back with us? Okay, did you hear
I
did you
did.
hear what the question was?
I heard that you just prepared your will last year when you were doing surgery.
Right,
What specific question?
right. Right. So what I was saying is that I also realized in the process that the attorney said I could actually also put what would happen to my children, or
Yes,
who should be the primary guardians of my children if
correct.
I die, and if their father dies, who should they be left in care of? And that was such a relief. You know
Yes.
what I mean, to know that that's documented. I did, because I thought a will was all about money.
No, no, no,
And they're
no.
like, no, you can put that in there too.
You
Isn't
can
that
put
something?
instructions for your children, instructions for your business as well. If you're a sole trader, and if you're a sole trader, you are personally responsible and liable for everything. So you can put that as well.
Wow.
Who is to, say for instance, you run a printing firm. Who do you want to take over the firm? What happens to the
Mm-hmm.
equipment? Who is to get the vehicles
Mm.
associated with the equipment? Do you want only
Wow.
family member to take over in your stead as sole trader of the business? You can put all of that.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. That's
So
powerful stuff.
yes, it's
Mm-hmm.
different for limited liability companies, obviously, because you have a different structure. But where you are personally
Right.
liable for the business, which many Jamaicans are, it's just them running the business, and they're registered, but they're not a limited liability company. So that's different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, no, man, this is powerful stuff. As I said, I don't think a lot of people realize just how high level or how detailed you want to get. And as you said, the type of detail that you can leave in a will, which
Hmm.
again, really is very clean, makes it clean and easy
Hmm.
for the loved ones left behind,
Hmm.
or the sole trader business that's left behind, so you know
Hmm.
what to do with what. Because otherwise, as we know, it can be pure stress.
Yes.
So I think the next burning question then is, Laurie. So I think we're sold. Everybody needs to do a will. It doesn't mean you're gonna die tomorrow. It just means that you have something in case something happened and that we never planned for, and things are in place. So that's cool. But I guess the next burning question would be that people have is, well, could you just walk us through high level the steps
Mm-hmm.
of what involves with setting up a will? What do
Mm-hmm.
I how do I go about it? Do I just write a letter or type something and sign it and fold it up and put it in a night table? Or what do I do? So walk us through high level those steps, please.
Okay, so really quickly, I came up with a neat way to remember it. A, B, C. Your assets, your beneficiaries, and the content of the will. Right? So the assets and beneficiaries is the
Ah.
preliminary stage, right? So A for assets, and your assets are, the things that are that you own, that are in your name, and that you have either legal ownership of, or physical control of, or you purchase, that kind of thing, right? So you need to think about your assets based on the type of asset. Now that determines if you can will it or not, and it also will determine the best way to protect it, because there are some assets, or based on your life situation, it may be best for you in an instance where if you have an aging parent, and them not really want to do no will, but they say, all right, I will add your name to the title, is what a lot of people like to do. Or they will transfer it to you. And so when you are looking at your assets, you have to figure out, can I really transfer this asset? Can my father really transfer this asset to me based on the title and how he holds the property? As well as, are there mortgages on it? Is there a lien? Does the bank have an interest in it? So you really have to do a good inventory, I like to call it, of your assets. That now will determine, what are we going to put in the will, how we're going to structure it, and then you think through your beneficiaries, right? So you do an inventory of your beneficiaries, and your beneficiaries don't necessarily have to be your immediate family. It's literally whoever you want to benefit from the transfer of the assets via the will, right? So as I said, that could be your place of worship, your alma mater. It could be a friend, and it could also be, as I said, you're
Okay, I
direct
don't
family
know if we
member.
lost Laurie. So, oh, Laurie, or hello, Laurie.
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, you are
Sorry.
breaking up. We lost like the last two sentences. Could you go over
Okay.
again, please?
So beneficiaries. Once you figured out who your beneficiaries are, you move into content, right? So a will has to be in writing. Hey, it can be just something you said to somebody. This is what I want to happen. She must get this, she must get that, he must get this. It doesn't work like that. It has to be in writing. You have to have,
All right.
right? You have to have persons who are responsible for carrying out your wishes. Those are executors, right? And then you have to
Mm.
ensure that after you've detailed all your assets and your beneficiaries in it and how you want the beneficiaries to get it and when, in some instances, it has to be witnessed by two persons. And one thing that we run afoul of a lot in Jamaica is we use these standard form wills that we get in the pharmacy or the bookstore. And
Oh,
we know,
yes.
not to knock them in their entirety, right? Because I've not seen all of them, but there are two things that are often missing from those two clauses, which are essential to every will. You have to have a revocation clause, which says this is my final will and testament. Every other will before this is null and void. And you also have to have a
Mm.
residuary clause that says anything not captured in this will, right? All the rest and residue of my estate must go to this person, or it must be dealt with this in this way, right? So what happens is, if there are gaps in the will, like if there's no residuary clause, what happens is, all the things you would have named in the will would be transferred based on what you say, but where there are things that don't appear in the will, those will have to be administered at the administrator general, right? So you would have done a will,
Oh.
and only piece of it, really and truly, um, you would have been able to execute, because all the things that were not captured in there, because a lot of the times we don't update the will, or we buy another house and we never update it, or we have
Mm-hmm.
another child, or something, and
Mm.
it's not updated. So all the rest and residue must go to that person is essential, and a lot of the times those form wills don't have that, right? So
Okay.
those are the ABCs: your assets, your beneficiaries, and then your content, which is the formalities around the will.
So you raised a good point about your executors, your beneficiaries, and the witness. So the executors are the people who are going to make sure that their wishes as outlined in the will take place as you have outlined them, right?
Right?
The beneficiaries are the people who go and get what gonna get based on what the will has stated. And then you need witnesses to sign again to witness that they've seen you sign this document, right? So tell me now though, can a beneficiary be a witness to the will, or can an executor be a beneficiary? I mean, what are some of the pitfalls we should avoid? Because you have some people ready to witness some wills where they're the beneficiary and the executor and the judge, the jury, and everything. So, I mean, is there anything we need to bear in mind where that is concerned? Okay, let me bring back in Laurie. I tell you, Laurie, Murphy's Law with technology. Laurie, what did you lose? We're not going. What did you hear the whole question?
Beneficiaries, the executors, and the
Yeah, in terms
witnesses.
of who
Right.
can be and who can be not.
So
Mm-hmm.
an executor can be a beneficiary. I've seen that.
Okay.
For
Okay.
a very long time, we had a rule whereby the law and the procedure didn't really allow for witnesses to be beneficiaries. But I believe in recent times, the especially where there's an issue or somebody can't be found, or the court is really struggling to on the face of the will figure out who is to get what, and if the will is in fact valid, we are
Mm.
seeing where they are allowing witnesses to be beneficiaries as well. But hard
Okay.
and fast.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to think about your executors. I've been an executor twice now, three
Mm-hmm.
times actually, and I've done personally two estate matters, and I'm now an executor for another person. And your
Mm-hmm.
choice really should be around somebody who is reliable, somebody who you can depend on and count on to honor your wishes, somebody really
Mm.
who is
Yes.
not looking to gouge out your estate. You can leave something for them,
Mm-hmm.
but you really want them to be reliable, dependable, and trustworthy in honoring your wishes. um yeah,
Yes.
you
Yes.
don't want to and also somebody who can stand up for you, because you won't be here.
Yeah.
And so when the fighting and the
Right.
cascade starts,
Mm-hmm.
they are steady, and they are
Yeah.
methodical and trustworthy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, very, very important. And I agree with you. I know there were some times where I guess for me when I did mine and it's advice that I got, and obviously I'm not an attorney, so I'm not gonna even pretend to be one, but I found it to be cleaner where neither my executives nor my witnesses were beneficiaries. So
Exactly.
everybody who was a beneficiary on my will, them never witnessed my signature, and I didn't name them as executors
Exactly. It's
because
just
me never
cleaner.
want nobody to
Cascas.
come. Yeah, if it's saying, well, you influenced this and you influenced
Exactly.
that, just to avoid the very appearance of doubt.
Yes, yes.
That is exactly what I did. So this is good stuff. I love that ABC acronym, Laurie, and I guess I mean, my next question is, I mean, we're talking about wills and passing on or legacy or assets to loved ones after we're gone. Is there anything that can be done during our lifetime? Because there are some people who say, well, it's not always all about what you leave behind. Sometimes some people have assets that they want to pass on to children. No, we had a spaces last week where I think somebody had shared a story where she asked her father for whatever he was going to leave for her after he died. She asked if she could get it now, and I think it was a piece of property. and he ended up somehow transferring it to her, and she was able to use that property as an asset to do something now, and she needed it far more then than she needed it when her father died 40 years later, what turned out to be 40 years later. So I mean, is there anything that you could tell us about, anybody who would want to pass on assets in their lifetime, and things that people should consider and how to go about that?
Yes, definitely. So, a lot of the times Jamaicans, as I said earlier, we say we want add somebody's name to the title of a property. Really, it's a transfer, as you just alluded to. You can do an outright transfer from one person to another. I have actually
Mm-hmm.
seen a situation where a man had 7 children, um,
Whoa.
7 children, and he was married previously and then got remarried, and the first wife died. And what he did with all his properties, in Saint Anne, Saint Catherine, and whatever, he actually, when he was beginning to decline, he said, "You know what? I'm just going to one transfer all of these properties to the individual children that I want them to have." So he had a discussion with each
Okay.
of them and said, "This is what is in my portfolio of
Mm-hmm.
property. You're the eldest, you choose first, then second, then third, right down to seventh." And then for his wife, he said, and he made it very clear, he in his will, because they were still living in the house and her name was not on the property, that that property must be passed to her on his death, right? So what that did was that saved the wife, who was not the mother of the 7 children, from having
Mm-hmm.
to have the headache of dealing with probating a will to transfer 7 properties to these 7 children, pay all the
Yeah.
transfer tax at that time for it, and just administratively the headache around that. So he was actually quite prepared and did it that way. But you have to be
Okay.
careful, because that was an outright transfer. In some instances where property is concerned, you can, as I say, add somebody's name to the title, but it only makes sense if you add their name to the title as a joint tenant. Because if they're a tenant in common, the share that you still hold will still be able to be passed via a will
Mm-hmm.
or
Okay.
on
Okay.
intestate, right? So you have to know how you're doing what and how you're holding the property. And also, you know, when you do it while you're alive, you actually can avoid a lot of the tax associated with administering
Mm-hmm.
your estate,
Mm-hmm.
on passing, because the revenue office, when you do your application, especially if you do it 12 months after,
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing it on property that's not your marital home. So say for instance it's a business property or an investment property,
Mm-hmm.
the taxes and stuff on those can add up. So a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times it's better for you to make an assessment of who you want to hold the property in your life. Do you trust them to? Do you trust them to, not while you are alive, not allow you to benefit from it, or do you want to
Mm-hmm.
just give them outright? Right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot
Mm-hmm.
of a
Mm-hmm.
lot of persons also will add persons to their bank accounts, but even that is not hard and fast as well, because you can add somebody to an investment or a bank account, but the court can look at it to say, well, what was really the intention of this money? Because even though
Mm-hmm.
this person's name is on it, the will says all my money, the rest and residue of my estate, must go to Mary Jane, but the account is being held in John Doe's name. And the court,
Oh.
the court will really look to see, all right, so was this an operating account? Were they in business? Were they using the money jointly? Was the person holding the money for
Mm-hmm.
the person who is now deceased? If they're holding the money for the person who's now deceased, the court looks at that differently and as part of their estate. So you have to be very careful, and have a proper detailed conversation with your financial advisor. At JMMB, we
Mm-hmm.
have our financial planning conversations with you, and we go through, your savings, your emergency, your this and that. And if you want to add people to it, you should definitely have that conversation with your advisor, and then also get legal advice. Okay, so this is this
Absolutely.
account. and
Mm-hmm.
I want for it to be dealt with this way while I'm alive. Does this work?
Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that having that conversation with a professional. Real quick, Laurie, what is this thing of setting up a trust?
Okay.
Because I know some people say setting up a trust is an option. What is that exactly?
So a trust can be formed in two ways. We call it by operation of law, which is just something that occurs automatically and it's treated as such, and I'll go into that. But then you also can do a trust deed. And so, in everyday life, I guess the most common association is, we kind of think about Cayman and those big corporations and the money sit down somewhere and it's all kind of nebulous. But it actually doesn't need to be as high flown and unreachable as that. A trust is literally a detailed document that
Mm,
outlines how you want an asset to be treated with, right? So it is far more detailed than a will. It's
oh.
far more detailed. It will you can have instructions in there from, if it's a property, I want the income from the property to be split 50-50 with this way. Where if the property is to be sold, it can only be sold in this at this time. If my
Mm,
children must benefit from X% of the property. All the property
mm-hmm,
funds needs to be managed by a funds brokerage company or an investment management company. That company is to produce to the trustees, who are the persons managing on behalf of the
mm-hmm,
legal owner.
mm-hmm.
They will give detailed instructions about how they want their funds. And a lot of the times persons who have like a large portfolio of properties or investments or companies, or
Mm-hmm.
will set up a trust to
Mm-hmm.
manage it. um
Right, right.
right.
And I suspect, especially again, if you have children, so like, if I would have done a will and I said,
Right.
okay, everything is gonna be left basically to my children, but their father would be responsible for using the funds, to take care of them until they
Exactly.
reach the age
Right.
of 18, at which point,
Right.
and then certainly, I guess the trust would now go into more detail in terms of how
About
much of the
that.
money, what is for college, what is
What
for
is
this, that,
exactly
and the other.
who must
I get,
manage it?
yeah, yeah, I get
And
that
but
completely.
the last thing I'd say though is a lot of Jamaicans like to hold property with their children. They want to ensure that that leave the child with something, or the child has some sort of property.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with that is that is where a trust can be formed as well, and it's actually required by the National Land Agency, because children really aren't prior to the age of 18, you can't really sign legal aid
Do
documents.
anything.
You can't
Mm-hmm.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
the National Land Agency will either ask for a trustee to be appointed to act for the minor. So if the property is
Mm-hmm.
to be, something is to happen with it, they'll ask for that, and they'll also ask for um a trustee to be registered on behalf of the minor under the title itself. And then,
Mm-hmm.
they in doing so, they will request that a declaration of trust that relating to the land be done. It's a
Mm-hmm.
deed, a trust deed, a
Mm-hmm.
document, and that they
Mm-hmm.
will hold it at the title's office,
Mm-hmm.
just because they want to ensure that persons aren't using children to get back at people, or to hide things
Oh
from
yes.
people, or to,
Mm-hmm.
for their own personal gain, or so that is the way
Mm-hmm.
the National Land Agency, through a trust, protects children on titles.
Okay, okay, good to know. So, Laurie, we're just going to wrap up with you before we hop
Hmm.
back over to Caroline for our last segment. So just to remind us real quick, so if I die without a will, what happens? What takes place?
Well, so as I said earlier, only the persons who are eligible to um, apply on your behalf to have your estate administered can apply. And there are some
Mm-hmm.
very detailed rules about that in our civil procedure rules, and our the acts relating to intestacy, which is dying without a will, right?
Mm,
The process is, it's an administrative process. It's very, very heavy on, submitting
mm-hmm.
documentation, submitting proof, birth certificate, death certificate,
Mm,
evidence of who owns what, and a lot of things. But also at the end of it, the distribution is different, can be different from who applies. So
mhm,
a spouse can apply, a child can apply, but when the administrator general and court looks at it, they will assess based on what we call a table of distribution, who is to get what and in how many
mhm,
shares. It is very detailed. And a lot of people
mm.
just think, oh, I am the spouse, so I must get everything. It
Oh
actually doesn't
dear.
work like that. So
No,
if
no.
spouse is defined in a certain way in Jamaica, single man, single woman, married or live together for 5 years, not less than 5 years. There's that. The court, the law is also very clear on who a child is. Prior
Mhm,
to this, persons who were not born inside the marriage would have a challenge. So it's very clear now who must get what and in what shares. It goes down to thirds and quarters and all manner of
mm,
percentages. So,
mm,
at that point, you're leaving it up now to just the evidence that you can provide that you are entitled to apply, and then for it to be administrated according to the law. And that's it.
mm. And that may, and to cut a long story short, that may just be against everything that you would want, So,
Exactly. Exactly.
you may have some children who probably never shat on you in life and went about their business,
Exactly.
and you would want to leave most of your estate to the child who was the one who was
To
taking
take
care of
care
you
of
in your
you.
last years,
Exactly.
and they end up getting just a portion, and some of the heartless people can pardon my
Exactly.
language. But I mean, it is what it is. So the point is, you know what, let's do a will. That's the
Mm-hmm.
bottom line. Doing a will no means that you're gonna dead tomorrow. It
Good.
just
Yes.
means having something in place to prevent the stress after it is your
Mm-hmm.
time on this earth. Laurie, you've really dropped some great nuggets. I'm going to jump back over to Caroline because we're in the final stretch of our conversation tonight. Guys, thank you for joining us. Just to remind you that this session is being recorded. So if you missed anything at all, you can catch the recording, yes, here on Twitter, but we also take about a week or two. We also put the recording up on YouTube. So whether you have a Twitter account or not, somebody can easily access it. JMMB Group Jamaica's YouTube channel. We have the prior episodes there as well that you can also listen into and share with anyone who you think could find this information valuable. So, Caroline, we're going to wrap up the conversation with you because I mean, I know we've been talking about wills and leaving stuff behind. I know there's some people who have heard, I know I've heard, I don't really know the answer. But if you could share with us, because there are some people who understand that there is a way to pass on money to your loved ones through an insurance policy, right? How does that work exactly, generally, and also in case of minors as beneficiaries? Could you explain that a little bit for us, please?
Sure, Kerry-Ann. Like a will, somebody can name anyone as a beneficiary on their insurance policy, right? It doesn't have to be a relative or a connected family member. However, unlike a will, the beneficiary stated on an insurance policy is it supersedes the information contained in a will concerning that policy. What do I mean by that? It means that if I have a life insurance policy and I name three individuals, Caroline, Kerry-Ann, and Laurie-Ann, as the beneficiary, and then I have a will, even if I write the will afterwards and list that same life insurance policy and say I'm naming Keisha, Manley, and Victoria as the beneficiary, that don't carry any weight in terms of the life insurance policy. It's the
Okay.
original beneficiaries that will remain, right? And I just wanted to get this clear to
Okay.
everyone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a life insurance policy, right? One way of passing on money, apart from you being the beneficiary, I want to touch quickly on a way in which persons who, if you don't have any money, you're the poorest of the poor, you can't support your children or your family in their lifetime, you can do it at your death. And it's not morbid. but it's a way, life insurance is a way of creating a legacy and creating an estate for your loved ones, right? And so you can name your children, and if they are minors, which legally for life insurance, if they're under age 18, you would have to leave a trustee, a trusted individual, don't have to be a family member, but a trusted individual who will secure the best interest of these minors. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not a lifelong um, it's not a lifelong work for this trustee,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when the beneficiaries reach, you can sign at the beginning of the policy that the job of the minor will the job of the trustee will cease when the minor becomes one, either age 18, age 21, or age 25, when they will have full access and vested in the proceeds of the insurance policy. All right.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
what you can also do when you're naming your beneficiaries to ensure that you name a revocable beneficiary. And this means,
Ah.
and this means that you as the policy owner, you can make any changes, any deposit, even to the beneficiary themselves, any withdrawals if it's an investment policy without the beneficiary's signature or consent. If you
Ah.
name them as irrevocable now, that means you would need their signature and consent to do any of the actions that I previously mentioned. All right, so it's important that
Mm.
you name the beneficiary revocable. Now, there are
Yes.
instances in like business insurance when persons take out either personal life insurance or a creditor life insurance to secure a loan, right? A loan for a car or a mortgage or anything like that. And in that instance, the policy would be assigned, and that assignment to the financial institution would supersede the rights of the beneficiary on that policy,
Mm.
right?
So when you
So,
say assign it to the financial institution, yes, sorry, go ahead.
no, so for instance, I have a policy. I have two dependent children, and I name them as revocable beneficiary. But I also took out the policy to secure a loan for a motor vehicle. And so I have to name the
Ah.
financial institution as the assignee on the policy. So if I die
Mm.
before the loan is cleared, right? The assignee, which is the financial institution, will have the rights to the proceeds, and then they would use that to clear the loan. And then, in the instance where there's a difference left behind, then the
Mhm.
beneficiaries would get that. So if I name two
Okay.
persons and they were 50-50, whatever is the difference, it would be applied to those two beneficiaries in the ratio of 50-50. So that is
Okay.
important to know.
Very important because I think that also applies like when you're taking out mortgage. I know a lot of mortgagees say, boy, you need some insurance on this mortgage because if God forbid anything happened to you, the mortgagee wants
Right.
their their mortgage debt paid. You know what I'm saying? So
So,
it's a similar kind of a thing, eh?
yes, it is. And it's a good point that you mentioned because it's a way of ensuring that your assets is carried on to your beneficiary. Because a lot of times when you do have an insurance on your loan and they, like for instance, you have a lot of places offering loans without collateral, right? And they use like the
Mm.
car or the home. I don't know if they do it for mortgage, but I know they do it for motor vehicle. And they use the motor vehicle as the collateral for the loan. So in the instance that the person may die before the loan is repaid, what they will do is seize the vehicle and then sell it to recover the difference on the loan.
Oh
But
dear.
if it is that you have an insurance policy that covers that loan, the asset can pass to your family member without they having to worry about adding to their debt burden or debt load, right? The insurance policy
Hmm.
would cover or clear the balance, and that's in the case of like creditor life. It will clear the balance, and you have no more financial obligation to the institution. Or in case of a personal life insurance, it would clear the balance, and any difference that is left will be passed on as well as the assets to your beneficiary. So it's a win-win
Okay.
situation.
As you said, it's a, early at the top of the discussion, Caroline. You said it's a love gift, to your family. You're not leaving behind a lot of unwanted or unplanned for debt or anything like that. And as you said, if you're the caretaker or the caregiver or the breadwinner in your lifetime, having the right insurance policy in place to offer that sort of a replacement income, as it were, or lump sum for your loved ones who would have been depending on you, can really be wonderful and a great relief in a time of what is otherwise grief. One final question, Caroline. I know a very popular offering that is spoken about often is the family indemnity plan. What is that?
Okay. Well, the family indemnity plan is a great plan. It's a basic plan for those who say, okay, one, either I don't have any money, I don't have any money to pay for insurance, I can't save, I can't invest. What they can do is take out a family indemnity plan. The main advantage of this plan is that it offers insurance cover for up to six family members, and those family members are children under the age of 25, your spouse, whether married or common law, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your parent or parent in law. So even if you don't get along with your mother in law and your spouse is responsible financially or contribute to their well being financially, you can have them on your family indemnity plan. And in the event of what comes to all of us, you can have protection and coverage for them so that they can be buried, they can be put to rest without any problems and any debt burden on your part. Because the last time I checked, financial institutions not giving you any loan for funeral expense. They're not giving you any loan for
That is
sickness and
it.
disease,
That
right?
is it.
So this policy
Mm-hmm.
is a wonderful base policy to have, but it's a base policy, right? Because the maximum
Mm-hmm.
coverage is $1 million. And while that can cover most funeral, if it is that you want something more for your kids, something more from for your families to continue beyond you being there, you can consider like an individual life insurance that will give you more coverage and hence more assets or legacy for your loved ones.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah, yeah.
But before I go, I
Yeah.
wanted to, I don't know if you're going to mention how it is that insurance is important for the business owners, right? And some of the
Well,
SME.
Caroline, because I saw that and I said, we are going to have to reconvene because we have such rich information and we're actually just over time. So, Caroline, I know if we invite you back, you're going to come back, right?
Yes,
Because you're
I
a
will.
proper pro. You are a pro in this thing.
Yes, yes.
So we're gonna have you back because I think there also needs to be a fulsome discussion for businesses, and I'd
Mm,
love to take us through because I know Laurie touched on even in the wills conversation having a will to talk about your business and what should be done with it if you're a sole proprietor, but if you're a
mm,
limited
Sole trader,
liability
yeah.
company, sole trader, but limited liability would be a whole different story. And similarly, I think that there are similar considerations that you would have to be discussed. So I'm going to ask us to park that because we're going to have to come back and address it. And I probably should even invite our SME Resource Center team to be a part of that conversation as well because we're just over out of time, ladies. But ladies, thank you so very, very, very much for
Thank
your
you.
time here. I mean, we
thank you
could be
too.
here. We could be here all night because this is such rich information. I think we've come away all the better for it. As I said, guys, everybody listening, this has been a recorded session. So if you missed anything, you can catch a recording on JMMB Group JA's Twitter page. We're going to be putting up the recording in another week. Certainly, JMMB Group Jamaica's YouTube channel. And you can tune in and share it with anybody who would have missed this information. And if you have any other burning questions for any of our panelists, feel free to DM us and we'll definitely do our best to get back to you. So thank you again, Laurie and Caroline. Thank you so much
You're welcome.
to my
Most
marketing
welcome.
team. Thank you to my marketing team who continues to support in the back to make these sessions happen. And I'm going to wish everybody a good rest of the week. Have a great holiday weekend. Take time. COVID is not finished. It is not finished. So, everybody, please be safe and get some rest. And we see you again next week, God's willing. All
Okay.
right.
Bye, everyone. Have a good
Bye,
evening.